This idea of walking in God's truth is something that we have to be aware of every single day. On a daily basis, we have to be aware of the fact that we need to walk in God's truth. One area of my life where I wasn't always walking in the truth of God and denying the sin in my life is whenever I would come home from work and I would be tired, both mentally and physically tired. And I just wanted maybe 5 minutes to myself before any engagement from anybody whatsoever, right? But the thing about it is that when I got home, my wife would want to ask me about my day. My kids would want to ask me about my day. They'd want to tell me about their day, and I would just be short with them. I'd be short-tempered. I would be harsh, and I would feel the conviction of the Spirit in my heart over those things, and I would just ignore it. I would label it with something else. I would say, "No, I'm not. That's not a sin. I'm just tired." They understand that I'm tired. Why do I need to confess that, right? And the thing about it is that once I let the Spirit work in my heart and show me, hey, no, you need to confess these things because you're sinning. You're being harsh, you're being selfish, you're being impatient, and you need to confess these things and be cleansed of these things and grow, right? And and once I started doing that, and once I started understanding that a confession of those sins and talking to God about these things and letting Him work with me on growing through those areas is whenever I began to not deny that sin anymore. When I began to label it for what it really is, and it was sin. It was sinful for me to do that. I would ask Him for forgiveness. I'd ask my wife for forgiveness, and I'd ask my kids for forgiveness. And that's the only way that I was able to overcome those things in my life, was to allow the Spirit of God to convict me and recognize what He was trying to convict me of, right? So that's what it's like. It's like having a vehicle and you're driving down the road and all of a sudden the check engine light pops on. It's a warning light. You can choose to ignore that, or you can choose to get it looked at, right? Once you admit, hey, there's a problem with my car, then you can get it fixed. If you don't ever admit that there's a problem with your car, eventually your car's going to die, right? That's kind of how it is. And if we don't confess those sins, if we don't acknowledge the sin in our life, if we decide to deny it, we decide to ignore it like we do the check engine light, then we're going to run into big problems later on.